Thank you very much, Magnus. It is a real pleasure to be here, and I can't tell you how much I enjoy being here, not only in this beautiful city, but also in the company of so many people who know and love the wild. What I'm going to talk about now is really about taking the idea of rewilding further. So we've heard about rewilding Europe and rewilding in the sense of changing landscapes and reintroducing species. But what I'm going to talk about is the rewilding of global society. And in particular, I want to introduce the idea that the rights of nature, or the rights of Mother Earth if you prefer, should be a foundation stone of the nature strategy for sustainability, which is being launched at WILD10. So next week we'll be going into the Global Forum, and there'll be 3 workshops on nature's rights. And the idea is that this fundamental philosophy will underlie the nature strategy for sustainability, which aims to establish a global network committed to generating international guidelines, replicable models, and tools for development practices. And in particular, the nature strategy for sustainability prioritizes nature for its fundamental role in alleviating human suffering, enhancing human security, and the value of nature in the economy. But we can talk more about that next week, and I think that the sessions on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week will substantially amplify these discussions. But what I want to talk about now is what I mean by the rewilding of global society. And before I speak about that, it's necessary to talk about what we mean by wildness. For me, wildness is that mysterious, awesomely creative force that not only orders the universe, but that has brought into being this incredible community of life that we are so very, very privileged to have been born into. We can't see wildness. All we can see of it is its tracks. We know it by its tracks. We know it by the incredible diversity, the connection, and the communities, the ecological communities that it creates. The numbers of beetles beyond measure, the crackling coral reefs, the incredible rainforests, the extravagant beauty of a peacock, or the power and majesty of a thunderstorm. These are the tracks of wildness. What little we know of this wild force, this creative force that has brought the universe into being and that drives the evolutionary story that we are part of, is that it flows. It flows in genetic streams through time. It flows through the symbiotic connections that bind the community of life together, and it flows through us. It flows through us, connecting human nature with the greater nature of which we are part. And it binds all beings, all that have come into being in Earth, into an unbreakable kinship. It creates an Earth community of which we are part of and which we can never not be part of. So, despite the fact that the industrialized civilizations which currently dominate the Earth cling so stubbornly to the idea that we are separate from and superior to nature, the truth is we are all wild children of a wild Earth. And of course, the wilderness congresses have been central in protecting wild places and wilderness. And these places are so important because, of course, they are the great universities where we go to learn about the great law, the law of nature. They are the cathedrals of nature where we learn what it means, what sacredness means, where we learn what it means to be human and our true potential and who we truly are. But it's also interesting to note that in English language, as many other people have pointed out before me, the word wild and the word will share a common root. So in many senses, one can understand the wilderness, the wild places, as the place where nature is able to express itself most fully, where each of the beings is able to express their inherent qualities in relationship with all other beings. The place where the land has freedom of expression, self-willed land, if you like, self-ordered land. So in that sense, the volition of wild places is particularly important for us to learn from. And of course, like all other species, Our species has a deep desire to live, to love, and to flourish, what the American Declaration of Independence calls the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, in human societies, this natural desire has been distorted. And we have decided that instead of pursuing this dream from within the context of this community of life, we are going to set up our will, our human will, in opposition to the wild will of the earth, and we are going to attempt to dominate that whole. And because of that, we have become alienated from the earth, and this is the root of the problems that we see. We all know this. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And what I'd like to suggest to you is that if human behavior is the problem, then how we govern ourselves, the systems that we use to govern human behavior, are absolutely central to the solution. We have to recognize that our governance systems and our legal systems have been designed not to enable us to participate in this community of life and to work with the laws of nature, but to dominate and oppress. To give you one example, our laws define anything that is not a human being or a corporation as a property, as a thing incapable of having rights, as a resource to be used and exploited. And we know from our own history that when we did that to people, when we called people property, slaves, there could never be anything other than an exploitative relationship between the slave owner who had all the rights and the slave who had none. And that is exactly the relationship we have hardwired into our governance system, the relationship between humans and all of the planet. And that's what we've got to change. Because if you think about it for a moment, isn't it crazy that rivers don't have the right to exist and to flow, that forests don't have the right to exist, when even the most fundamental human right, the right to life, is wholly dependent on, for example, the availability of water. And we can't have water unless we protect the rights of the whole hydrological cycle to exist, the mountains, the forests, and the rivers. Now, 12 years ago, at the 2001 7th World Wilderness Congress, the late Professor Wangari Maathai proposed a motion which was adopted by the Congress about developing a new philosophy of law that would recognize that humans need to be regulated as part of this earth community. After that, I wrote the book Wild Law that was referred to, and the ideas spread slowly through the world for about 5 years. But about 5 years ago, something very unexpected happened. There was a very rapid acceleration in the uptake of these ideas. Within a very short space of time, we had Ecuador adopting a constitution that explicitly recognizes the rights of Mother Earth. Bolivia passed a law on the rights of Mother Earth. Dozens of communities in the United States passed local ordinances recognizing the rights of nature. We developed a universal declaration of the rights of Mother Earth that was adopted by a conference of 35,000 people in Bolivia as a companion piece to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Vilcabamba River in Ecuador won a case against the provincial government that was interfering with its flow by dumping rocks and spoil into it. The Whanganui River in New Zealand has just been recognized as a legal person with two humans to act as its representatives. The United Nations has developed a website on living in harmony with nature. It's had 3 interactive specialist discussions so far on the issue. And the language of the rights of nature and the rights of Mother Earth is now in UN documents, and including the declaration that came out of Rio +20 and out of the People's Conference at Rio +20. We have a global alliance of people who are working all over the globe to advance these ideas, the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. In South America, North America, the UK, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa are organizations taking these ideas forward. And these organizations are not focusing on tearing down the existing structures. They are focusing on being proactive, on creating the DNA of the new society that we want, developing the governance systems that we will need to create the ecologically sustainable, socially just, and spiritually fulfilling societies that we want to see. So rewilding in this sense is not just about the landscape, it's about the rewilding of society. It's about changing society so that instead of orientating civilization in opposition to nature, we align ourselves with nature. We adapt in the Darwinian sense to our environment. But if we are going to achieve this, if we are going to turn around this enormous tanker of industrialized civilization which is taking us towards disaster, we're going to have to dig very deep indeed. We're going to have to call on forces which are more powerful than the forces of greed and self-interest and ego. And we are going to have to work together with people throughout the world. And of course, there are forces that are stronger than that. And I refer to this wild energy, this wild, fundamentally creative force of the universe, which we get in touch with through connection, and particularly through wild spaces. And by aligning ourselves with the forces of nature, by structuring our governance systems so that they work with, not against nature, we can achieve this. But it's important not to be naive. For example, we cannot win a rigged game. At the moment, the rules of the game are based on property laws which deny the sacredness, in fact deny that anything other than human beings have subjectivity. And what we need to do right now is to do what the great social movements in history have done, the abolitionists, the civil rights movements, the women's rights movement, the anti-apartheid movement. We need to use the language of rights and freedom. We must not acquiesce in the denial of wilderness. And like the indigenous people have been telling us for centuries, we must reassert the scientific reality that wildness is present not only in a bear or a bison, but also in a mountain, a river, and a rock. So, ladies and gentlemen, the great rewilding of the world has begun, and it is happening now. And I urge you all to join in it, because you, the people in this room, are the agents of change. And this is the beginning of the restructuring of the world to allow for the flow of the great creative forces that have brought us so far. And as the great American ecological philosopher Thomas Berry says, these are the only forces that can take us safely into the future. Thank you.